Hi guys, Hounds Armory here, and today we're talking about sidearms. This is the second episode on my How to Build a Loadout series, so if you haven't watched the first video on primaries, there should be a thing in the card up there. So, sidearms. Let's get into it. So, of course, the question to start with is, what makes a good sidearm? And when I'm putting together a loadout, I look for three things in my sidearm. I look for something that's simple and reliable, something that matches my primary's ammo type, and something that's easy to carry, i.e. holsterable. Of course, I use my blaster parts small size holsters, and if you want more details on those, go watch my full loadout video, link in the card or description. I'll put it somewhere. And let me just go through that list of three things and elaborate a little bit. I want something that's quick and reliable so that it can save my life. Like most things on my channel, I like looking at things through a view of HVZ, where you get to make one mistake. You get to have one jam that you can't clear fast enough. You get to make one reload too slow. You get to miss one zombie you don't see. And then you're not a human anymore, and you get to go join the winning team most of the time, which is, you know, fun. But I want to do everything I can to stay as a human. So I look for things that will save my life. And mostly that means that it's something I can keep in a holster and I can draw, and the first time I pull the trigger, a dart will come out at a distance I'm familiar with. The second thing, it matches my primary's ammo type. This is simply for cross-compatibility. Especially at games like End War, where there's no special ammo types, I think you should only carry one. Simply because this lets you carry more, whatever your ammo is, whether full darts, half darts, mega darts, demolisher rockets, rival rounds, whatever you're running, koosh balls. We know you guys, you have fun. And it doesn't matter what your primary ammo type is, that's what your sidearm should fire. Because I know for me, I carry spare darts in my dump pouch, and if I draw my sidearm, I'm going to want to immediately reload it. And so if the most common dart I'm carrying for my primary also works in my sidearm, whether it be full darts, rival rounds, half darts, I want there to be that cross compatibility. And thirdly, I want something that's easy to carry. Of course, I've got my holsters, and you've seen me draw this Magpie a couple times now, and just how easy it is for me to draw that and put it away. I love these holsters. I'm gonna put a link to probably Out of Darts' store where you can get them down below. They're great. You can fit so many blasters. I think you can fit all of the blasters that I'm gonna talk about today in them, with one exception, which is amazing. And yeah, those are my three things. So let's start talking about some recommendations. So it should come as no surprise, but my first recommendation for good sidearms are the hammer shot variants. Whether this be a hammer shot, a sweet revenge, a Fort Victory, even a double strike. These are great sidearms if you're running full or half length darts. They are very simple mechanisms and very reliable. The fact that the cylinder rotates on the prime, the fact that you can leave these and all Springer sidearms primed and holstered, and the second you draw them, so I will demonstrate like this, the second you draw them and pull the trigger, a dart's gonna come out the blaster. And that is so valuable. Of course, personally, I like my Sweet Revenges because they're very smooth and svelte and easy to holster, as well as being one of the most comfortable Nerf blasters ever. The hammer shot is still perfectly good. It is easy to holster. Before I got my Sweet Revenges, I ran hammer shots in this holster right here. Of course, they're not quite as comfortable as the Sweet Revenge, but they're really not bad. Of course, I am a little let's just say I haven't had the best experience with things like 3D printed cylinders, though of course your mileage may vary. Mine just tend to not get the best air seals or the best dart fit. Of course, another great option if you're talking about darts is the strong arm, or what's the other one? The disruptor. These are of course the Mavericks descendants. They do have slam fire, which is an interesting feature if that's something you value. And stock, they do have one extra dart. Though, I think you can get, pretty sure you can get non-3D printed hammer shot cylinders that have at least 6 darts in them. I should look into those. That's a different thing. The strong arm is a great option, as well as the disruptor. They're really easy to holster, they're super comfortable, super reliable. Again, you can leave them primed and in your holster all day and not have any problems. Though, my personal problem with them is the fact that it takes 2 hands to operate past your first shot. I really like the hammer prime things because, well, you can dual wield, and as evidenced by my first line gear, I like dual wielding. It's fun. It isn't necessarily the most effective thing, but at least for HVZs, it does let you aim in 2 different directions and lets your reaction times in each of those directions be a little bit faster. It also lets you do things like carry an object or MacGuffin or a shield and still use your sidearm. I've seen games and heard of games of HVZ where if you're carrying MacGuffin, you can't use your primary. Now, if you're a rival guy, look no further than the Kronos. This thing is super nice, easy to holster, reliable as all get out, and I think we all know this. If you're a running rival, this should be your sidearm. Unless you have an out of Dodge Jupiter. Personally, my jury's out on that thing because I haven't gotten to test it yet, but that thing shows promise. Well, that being said, let's talk about a non-Springer sidearm that is very good. Now, I'm sure it will come as no surprise that another suggestion I'm gonna have is the Worker Hurricane. If any of you saw my videos from, I think, a week ago, where I just sat down in my workshop and raved about this thing for about 10 minutes, this is an amazing blaster. It's super small and compact. It's very reliable with its simple mechanism, and it's very fast because it's a flywheeler. Now, for me, this doesn't become a good sidearm until you put it on a 3S LiPo when you get that very quick spin up speed. Since that video, I have tested it on 2S, and while it's still good, it's not quite as snappy and responsive, which is something I really value in a sidearm. Of course, you can go all the way and do a 2-stage flywheel setup in this and hit some very high numbers, but of course, I gear a lot of my stuff towards HVZ, so the single stage with the stock motors and wheels on a 3S LiPo in this thing is perfectly good for me. As far as flywheel sidearms go, this is the only one I've tested, granted I've only tested 2, that I think is a good sidearm. And on that note, let's go to some suggestions for what not to use as a sidearm. So before I start this section, I just want to say all the blasters I'm going to talk about I love and are great and super fun blasters, and especially to the designers of these blasters, I love your blasters and I plan to run them in wars whenever the quarantine's over. But I don't think they make great sidearms for a few reasons. And since we just talked about the Hurricane, let's talk about my Magpie. Now, of course, this is a very, very good allegory for the Hurricane because they are both 6-shot revolver flywheel pistols. The Hurricane is great because it's simple. The Magpie is great because it's fun. I have the long length barrel going and it just feels good in the hand. I'm having some problems with it right this second. A few of my pieces just broke, but I want to get this video out. But I do plan to make a video on this specifically soon. But why is it not a good sidearm? Because it's not reliable. Mine took me about a month to get to work. I had to hand file down the indexing arm to get it to even rotate and fire. I mean, even right now, the trigger linkage, the trigger arm just snapped earlier today, actually. And so I really, really wish I could recommend it as a sidearm. It's so much fun. It feels so good in the hand. And the one hand, flip out the cylinder, spin it, flip it back in. It's just so much fun. But the fact that every time I pull the trigger, I'm not sure if it's gonna fire, how far it's gonna fire, or jam up on itself really bugs me. And I'm sure people have made some that are beautiful and smoothly working. I'm sure Mr. Heathpants himself, I know he runs his as a sidearm and he loves it. But at least with my experience, I can't suggest this right now. And that's one thing that's kind of turning me off of the 3D printed Flywheel the World pistols right now, is because they're all going to be finicky because they're all homemade and because you can only get such good detail and consistency out of an FDM printer, that there's always going to be some not fully reliable, especially when you compare it to something like a Sweet Revenge or a Hammer Shot that is injection molded, has very good tolerances, and is very well tested. Of course, the Magpie is well tested. I know Mr. Heathpants puts his stuff through so much testing and R&D before he finally publishes it. And I do want to run this as a sidearm, and I will run this as a sidearm, but probably never in an HVZ because it's not super reliable. That being said, let me put this away real quick. Oh, and it is going in the holster because I do love it. A few other things I can't suggest are things like the Hyper and the Hammer Storm. Now these I feel are a little more obvious why they're not good sidearms. Let's start with the Hyper. The reason this isn't a good sidearm is, well, let's just go down our checklist. It's reliable. It's quick because it functions just like all of the Hammer Prime blasters. You stick this in a holster, and the second you pull it, a dart will come out. And it's very easy to holster. So what's my problem with it? Well, it's a single shot blaster. If you go, I'll put a link in the description below to my review. I did do a mod to my Hyper to put a smart AR system on it, and that wasn't reliable. So it fixed the problem of it not being single shot anymore, but then it wasn't reliable. So I want to see this become a better sidearm because it has potential, but as it stands right now, it's not a good one. Now the Hammer Storm. I was so excited when I did my review for this thing, and to be frank, I keep being disappointed by it. The hammer and rotation mech geometries are mirrored from the Hammer Shot, so we can't use any of those parts. The rotation mech itself is thicker than the Hammer Shot one, so we can't swap any of our replacement cylinders in. And it's very bulky. Well, I would run this as a primary because it's easy to use. It is reliable. I would run one or two of these as a primary. I wouldn't run them as a sidearm because you can't holster them. Now, yes, you can, take a saw along this line here and cut off that bottom bit and probably remove some of this, but you're gonna then start losing some integrity to the blaster because there aren't screw holes in here. And so if you do that, your screw holes can have nothing holding the bottom of this yellow part of the plastic together unless you glue the orange bit in. You won't have anything forward of this screw post holding the shell together. And that, I think, is going to start giving you reliability issues. So I can't suggest the Hammer Storm either when it comes to sidearms. It is very fun, and like I said, all these blasters I'm saying don't use as sidearms, I love and I have a lot of fun with. they just don't meet my criteria of what makes a good sidearm, and kind of my theory on what a sidearm should do. Because I've been to wars and HVZs where I've had a Sweet Revenge or a hammer shot on my hip, in these holsters, in my previous holsters, and I've never touched it. And that's fine. But the couple times I've needed to draw my sidearm, because I've been using hammer shots and Sweet Revenges and these things that are super consistent and reliable, they've saved my life. Of course, that's in the context of HVZ, so that's where things like a Magpie that aren't super reliable within a war setting, you can get away with them not being super reliable because you just go respawn or you wait 10 minutes and it's the next round. In HVZs, you only get the one mistake. And to me, that's just too high a risk to not have something I can trust to work first time every time as my sidearm. That being said, I'm sorry if this felt like a little bit of a downer. I'm sure it wasn't. Just really hate saying I dislike blasters because they're all so much fun. But that being said, please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you think I missed one, I know I did. There's a lot of good options out there in the hobby, and these are just the ones I could put my hands on in 5 minutes. And the ones I wanted to talk about. Please leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Please like and subscribe. This channel keeps growing quick and it's making me so excited to come out and keep making videos for you guys. And all that being said, thank you so much for watching.